see my screen? Are you able to see my screen, mask wearing? Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great, great. I am glad. Okay, well, the purpose of this meeting this evening is it's a conversation that will inform you on the ways we're working to with you to make full in-person learning happen for every single child, and that is critically important for us. And so we want to help you gain some clarity around some of the realities of masking and not masking and how quarantines impact those things. And then also it seems relevant because we have 2 quarantines underway here at our school right now. And there's a few things that came up with those quarantines that we think is very relevant and useful for parents to know as we move into the future, and that by engaging you in this conversation and knowing what those things are, we have a better chance of keeping
It's not working. What's going on?
Okay.
I'd like to add, Chris,
Go ahead.
this is really, there have been other quarantines that have happened at UPES this school year, but this is the one that's impacted more students. So I just want to clarify, that's one of the reasons we thought it would be important to do this tonight.
Yep. So we're glad, and also that we are looking forward to doing our best to answer your questions and to find out what we all can do to come together as we move into this school year. While our policy is still mask wearing is strongly recommended for children and required for adults at UPE school building, I think this information will be illuminating and helpful. So I'm going to dive in here to our first thing that we want folks to know. Also, Dr. Domingue, are you able to watch for the, oh wait, no, I can do it too. I can, if you have questions, you want to put them in the chat, or if you want to just unmute and ask, that's fine too. So our new mask coming up in the next day or so, we'll be sending out a survey to our UPES community. And this is one of our strategies that we feel is a great way to help our families keep their kids from being quarantined. And the reason for that is, as a result of our recent quarantines, it became apparent to us that some of our families thought their children were wearing masks when in fact they were not. And our staff was left in a difficult position of not knowing who they could require to wear a mask because their family wanted them to, versus families who just, they didn't want their children to wear a mask. And that's the line we're trying to negotiate here. So this survey is designed to ask parents for permission for and to require or not require our mask wearing for their own child. And what that will do is it'll give each teacher a list of those children they can remind and require them to wear a mask because their family wants them to, and those families who do not want to be a part of that at this point in time. And so we think this is a great next step for us in terms of getting our mask wearing up, which we know is an effective protective factor. And also, we'll talk about this a little bit, does help us reduce the number of children affected by any particular quarantine situation. So that's, you'll see that survey in the next day or two, and please spread the word. We want folks to fill it out. It really will help our teachers.
Are there, one of the thinking around this is that we're a partnership with the parents, and that we know that other school districts may have gone to requiring masks, and our other schools are required under with the city of Manatee Springs. And I really want to clarify that is a partnership that we have also with the city of Manatee Springs. It's not something that we're working together through this task force. But what's unique about UPES, and Chris and the team talked about this morning, is that due to the small size, there's so much possibility that can happen there, and we don't have to do things the same way. And that doesn't negate the importance of mask wearing or vaccinations, but really due to the nature of it being such a lovely, smaller community, we can do things a little bit differently versus moving straight to an order. And I do want to just say that the school has done a fantastic job for the first 5 weeks of school. This is really the first time that there has been an impact. So kudos to parents for really acknowledging that symptom tracker is so important for us. And then also kudos to students and to our staff. I think there's something to recognize every week is really something that needs to be honored, because you all have been doing a lot of work around this area. So
and I agree. I think parents have done a fantastic job. And so in a lot of ways, this is about how you can help us and brainstorm with us with ideas about how to keep this going this year. Because like I said, we have the power as a small school and a small community to figure out solutions to difficult questions and things that people might not always agree to, but we can't. The key is we all agree that we should be keeping kids in school for in-person learning. So that's what I'm excited to talk to you all about tonight. Dr. Dumaine, do you want to speak? Do you want to speak to this slide here, which is what questions might you have about CDPHEs, which is El Paso County Public Health, current quarantine requirements, for example. And the reason why you might have questions about this is because, and we didn't put this in the letter out to parents the other night, but in both classes that were exposed to a positive individual, students who were wearing masks did not have to quarantine. And those who were not wearing masks were required to quarantine. And we just wanted to give that as an example of a guideline from the county that we have to follow and see if we could clarify anything for you or if you had any questions about that. And you can write them in the comments section or feel free to unmute. In teacher speak, this is called practicing wait time.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Yes, who's speaking?
Vicky.
Hi, Vicky.
Hi. With the requirements, I understand that a student who is wearing their mask didn't have to be quarantined. And I'm sure you don't have a lot of these students, but what about students who have been vaccinated? If they were vaccinated and not wearing a mask, do they have to be quarantined according to the guidelines?
No.
No, they do not.
No, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that.
Because I do know that, I have a 6th grader and, some 6th graders are 12. So, so some of them have been vaccinated. So, okay. So if you have the vaccine, then you don't have to be quarantined. Okay. Thank you.
That's correct. Great question.
That's a great question. So anyone who is fully vaccinated, so that's 2 weeks after their last dose, depending on if they had Johnson & Johnson, which is 1, or Pfizer and Moderna is 2. So it's 14 days after that. So we just had to quarantine a few students at Manatee Elementary School last week. And sorry, one student was right within that 14 days, so they did not have to quarantine. Also, if an individual has been positive in the last 90 days, they do not have to quarantine. We just have to have a PCR confirmation that individual was positive. And then if they were masked. So those are those conditions that help. And we do know that with changes for Pfizer dropping down to H5 and probably in the next month or so, then that might expand it for families who choose to do that. So good question.
Exactly. Yeah. And so things could change as we move into this school year and vaccines become more available for more children. And no matter what, the higher vaccination rates are going to improve the quarantining situation. So other questions about current quarantine requirements that we have right now that we can help clear up for you?
Chris, if you wouldn't mind making a shift to let this parent and teacher staff group get some feedback to the questionnaire that you'd like to be sending out in the next day or so.
Sure.
I think it would be valuable for this small group to see kind of what we've been thinking and have brainstormed and really get some feedback around that slide number 3 about why getting the parent feedback is important. So Chris, I don't know if you could pull that up while we're talking about this topic, because I think it relates. And we
Oh,
want
you
to make
mean
sure
the actual survey draft?
if you could pull up
Yeah.
the actual survey, because the last question basically, we want to make sure that that's as clear as possible. And we're seeking for 100% participation in this survey. And if we really need to go and do home visits, we will. Not because, mostly because also we enjoy meeting parents. So it's a good opportunity. But
I'm bringing that up, and I will do that. Here we go. And I want to make sure I am sharing it. I don't know. I'm gonna bring it over here to this screen. Are you able to see it at this point?
And real quickly, Chris, Whitney
Yeah.
has her hand raised.
Yes, Whitney, please go ahead.
So I had just put a comment into the chat box, but just noticing that we have 16 participants in this dialogue now. How, as parents, can we help you all to really come together and get the word out with this for everyone who isn't necessarily a part of this dialogue right now? I feel like regardless of where we stand on things, we're here for the betterment of our children and our students. But I really want to be a part of how we can really expand the messaging to this, so you can get 100% participation.
That's great, Whitney. Thank you so much. And part of it is that lack of clarity that teachers have about which families are expecting their children to wear a mask and which ones aren't is a start. And so we're going to be getting that word out, and there will be lots of opportunities. It's possible we could have other of these Zoom meets. It's possible we could do, other messaging, but we really do want the message to be less about mask wearing per se and more about keeping kids from being quarantined. And because that's really the point we're trying to make here, is we want kids to stay in school, and we're required to do certain things when children are exposed without masks. And that just isn't something we have a lot of ability to change. So
Whitney,
go ahead, Dr. DeBang.
Sure. Whitney, one idea that I have is that you all each have your own networks within the school. And I would say one of the teachers brought up today, just, the reach of 5 and just communicating why this does help us to keep kids in school and just to educate. And some of the conversations is that just because there's a mandate doesn't mean that the education stops. And so we're seeing, as I mentioned to the staff earlier, we have 3 schools that are in the sort of mask order, these requirements in partnership with the city. But we still are having to quarantine some individuals because it is just because it's there doesn't mean it's always enforceable. And so I think really what we're trying to do is that more of the education side versus going to this hard sort of stick perspective. And I'm not saying that's what's going on. We know that this is possible here because of the smaller network. So Whitney, do you have any thoughts, or do any other parents have some thoughts or staff about how we might be able to engage more in a different way?
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate that feedback. We're newer to the school district, and especially with COVID, and I apologize, I'm not in the optimal place to speak on a microphone right now. But I think that's kind of the hard part about all of this is that, I love the fact that we're a community that's small, but I, haven't been ingrained in that. And I really do feel strongly. And I'm just speaking of a parent that has 2 students that have now been quarantined as of this week. And I don't want to point fingers or be judgmental in any way. I'm absolutely about the efficacy of education, and I just want to be able to make a difference. And so I felt like that's where, obtaining some of this information, I'm very glad that everyone's on, but I want to be a part of moving forward in maybe a grassroots way and just getting the feedback that we need to do this for our kids.
Yes, I appreciate that, and that's our goal too. We want to engage everybody, no matter what their opinion is, to help us keep kids in school, and that's what this is about. So thank you for that comment. I can turn your attention here to the draft of our mask-wearing parent decision survey, and we would love your feedback on this. This is a draft, and we are going to be getting it out to you in email shortly. And one of the things we can do in the grassroots way is just reach out to 5 people and have them fill it out. That's a great way you could help us. But we're going to ask our families to use this form to provide us with specific written permission to require or not require mask wearing for your own child. And the results of this survey will help us better support the parents' decision about whether or not their child will wear a mask at school, while mask wearing is currently strongly recommended. And so we're hoping that people will fill it out quickly. As we go through it, you'll see that the guardian, parent guardian's full name, first and last, and then we have a spot where we can identify every child and the grade that they're in. And we know that some of you have many wonderful children, so it gives you an opportunity to say child number 2, they're in grade, whatever grade they're in, child number 3, whatever grade they're in, and so on and so forth. And then if you have 5 children, then thank you. You're funding UPES Elementary School all by yourself. So, and then the key question there is this one. Please check 1. And this is the important one that helps us help you and brings clarity so that we can back you up. We would like the school to require our child or children to wear a mask while they are at school, except at recess or when eating. Or parents can choose. We would like the school not require our child wear a mask while in school. And then just we understand that doing so drastically increases the odds that our child could experience a quarantine due to exposure to COVID. And that's just the reality of where we are. And as we move into colder months where we're moving inside, we just need that level of clarity. And so we're asking parents just to give us that level of clarity. And then it just says, thank you for helping us maintain in-person learning for all children all year long. And I'd love to invite anyone who has a question here. And I think there's raised hands. So let's go to there's a W. It's the first one and it's a purple W. I don't see a name.
Whitney, that's you.
Is that you, Whitney?
Have something, or did you just not put your hand down on Zoom?
Sorry, I hadn't put my hand down.
That's
worries.
okay. That's okay.
We have Vicky, Chris.
Vicky, please.
Hi. So I just want clarification. When you say except at recess or when eating, does that also mean when the students are in the outdoor classroom space or on field trips when they're outdoors?
When they're outdoors, they do not have to wear masks. When they are on buses, they are required to wear a mask.
Correct, because they have to wear a mask, everybody regardless on the bus.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe when you say please check 1, I don't know if maybe some of the other parents would be a little confused about that. So just if they're in the outdoor learning space.
I like that, except at recess. That's a great point, actually. I'm going to make that change right here.
Because then that would clarify for those of us who have our kids out like hiking and stuff that, they're on the long hike, they don't have to wear the mask. It's just in the indoor classroom spaces.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's great. Mary?
Chris, let me just add, I would say outdoor activities, and then that captures recess and outdoor.
Outdoor activity. Okay, great. I don't know what happened. Okay.
Recess inside if it's inclement weather.
Yeah, outdoor learning.
Good feedback. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's great. This is why we're doing it. Yes, who did I call on? I can't remember, but go ahead.
Me, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Hey, I just have a question or a suggestion about the survey.
Great.
I was wondering if it's possible to maybe finish with just an open-ended question where families could share some of their thoughts about how UPES is handling the COVID situation. I know a lot of families are busy and they can't make it to, say, a Zoom session, or they're a little intimidated to maybe email you or Dr. Domain. So I think that would give voice to some people that might want that.
Excellent, excellent. And what do we think that question might ask? What would that question be asking for?
Maybe something like, what are your thoughts about how UPES is handling the COVID situation? Or something to that effect.
Mary, one question, and I'll throw it out to everyone. One question that I kind of like is, what is one thing we might be able to keep doing? Should we keep doing, start doing, stop doing, as it relates to in-person learning and COVID? I think then it gives an does that sound fair? And they don't have to answer all of those, but I really think it kind of opens, like there's some really great things that are going on. We don't want to stop that, but there might be some other things we could start doing. Would that work in terms of capturing that, you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Great. That's really helpful, Mary. Thank you. You can you all see the edits as I make them?
Yeah.
We
Mary,
make it great.
And to everyone else, I think as the winter months get going, as much as we can, I think we're going to hear, let's be outside as much as we can without freezing or blowing away with the wind.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Playing with a parachute is not always an option at UPass. Okay. Elizabeth Booth.
Hey guys. So I just kind of want to just ask this question to help clarify like this in the 2 questions to keep to check one in the boxes. So say the majority of parents in the survey say we would like the school to not require our child wear a mask. Mm-hmm. Just in the case of this issue. Now, for those parents who would like their children to wear a mask, are we going to initiate any way to have the teachers make a list for the students of parents that actually want them to wear masks?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yeah, we are. We're going to provide that list to the teachers so that they have better clarity. Because right now we have children who aren't wearing a mask occasionally, and we don't know that their parents want them to wear a mask because we never asked. And so it only becomes apparent in times like this. So.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, to your point, one of the things that I talked to a parent yesterday, and the parent really said, oh, had I known that they weren't really wearing the mask well, I would have. And so it really is more of a communication. We don't want this to be punitive to a child or shaming or you know, calling them out. And so I think one of the things that Chris and in partnership with parents and the staff is how do we do that in an honoring way? You know, it's not going to be posted on the board. Here are all the scores. Here's all
oh, no.
It will be private. Yeah, just the teacher and the family. That's it.
One of the things that I have to share is that I'm excited about some of the possibility here, because I have not heard of schools, individual schools trying this attempt. Because like I said, even in the schools where we do have masks, it can be hard to enforce. And so if we really have that intrinsic motivation to where our goal is to keep every child in person and try to do that education and a belief about the mask or not, that's really not what we're discussing. But we hands down know that children need to be with us, and that is the most important place. So I hope, going back to Whitney, as much as we can have that be the narrative, that will be really important.
We feel like that's the area where there's a lot of important agreement, and we have a lot of amazing and wonderful families who might have different opinions on this issue, but they all agree on keeping kids in school, and we love all our families. And so it's a way to outreach to get a best approach to this, where we come together as a community and figure it out. Any other comments about or suggestions for this survey? And I have some other topics to go through that, and I welcome your questions with them too. But anything else around the survey that you would suggest?
One thing that it will become not anonymous, because in the beginning, so hopefully families know, Mary, to that question, that open-ended question, that you know, that anonymity goes away just in the nature of it. So
that's a good point.
Just something to share, nothing that I think is a problem, but hopefully that prevents someone. I don't think it will. I think it just gives the opportunity.
And the information just goes to the classroom teacher so that we know, you know what I mean? So we can follow up on the parents' wishes. Vicki, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I mean, I know that UPass is such a small school and you probably don't have, I mean, how many like first grade classes do you have? I was gonna say, would it help if you already had the teacher's name there so that then It makes
Sure.
it would
Yeah,
make your sorting so you can give the teachers a list faster. So then you don't have to sit there and match names with teachers.
I, li-
I don't know. Again,
no, I think that's a good point because I know that sometimes people, are so busy and they're new to the school and they can't remember their child's teacher's name. That's natural. It happens. And so I like the idea. I'm going to put in here to remind me to put those in. I think that's easy to do. Yeah. Great. Thank you for that suggestion. Other suggestions?
Chris, I think to this group, and maybe this won't be helpful, but it might be good to kind of share after this is implemented, what the mass participation rate becomes, just so that that can be highlighted as an opportunity to say, this is something that we tried something different, and here's the outcome. Either it increases or it stays the same or it decreases. And so I think if that
So you
would
can follow up with folks in the news update or something, or in other forums.
Yeah, we've seen an increase or we've seen it stay the same. We just want to be aware of that. And not to say you're going to get mass percentage rates, but just to see if there's any effect here.
I like that. Taking a note. Okay.
I'll just share, like, something like this is possible, Vicki, to the question you just asked, because there's one round, it's easier in that sense. If you tried to do this in a middle school where they go to 7 classes in a day, really, really hard to do.
It is, but we do have that luxury here of being so small. So that's a great suggestion. You can see I'll work on that after we're finished here. So are you able to see the slides again? The what we know slide, great. Okay, awesome. So that's about our survey, and then a few other things that we wanted you to know. Oh yeah, and I think we covered this too, but are there anybody who had additional questions about current quarantining requirements before I move on to our next slide?
I'm just going to add one last thing. Before the school year began and we were talking about, mask and not masking, there was a question around, will kids be embarrassed or shamed? We have seen zero evidence of that in all 4 schools around this topic. So I don't think that's an issue. I just wanted to clarify that I don't know our parents too. Have you heard anything like that? But I haven't, and I don't know, Chris, if you have.
I have been. That is not something we would tolerate, but if parents are hearing about it, I want to hear about it because we do not want children being put in the middle of this. We want them to love coming to school and feel fine about the choices that their parents are making. That it's not, they're there to be reading and writing and doing math and good things like that. Mary. Go ahead, Mary.
Thanks. So just a question on the quarantine. So when you're having students quarantine, like in those 2 grades, are your teachers teaching in a hybrid format, or are those students getting books and learning independently at home?
A little of both. There is a schedule whereby they do 30 minutes of reading and 30 minutes of math, and then they can have individual groups as well throughout the day, and a schedule that the teacher provides. But there is some independent work that they're doing as well. And so it is, I think it is similar to the hybrid model last year for those children that are quarantined. Yeah, but it isn't sitting in front of a screen for 7.25 hours a day. That we don't feel is reasonable for a child.
Right. And so when they're in that 30 minutes of reading and math, are they logging on to the class live? So there's students in the classroom doing math and at home simultaneously?
It depends on the class. For music, sometimes it's a recorded lesson and with something they can submit. In some classrooms, it is live sometimes, and at other times, it's a combination of the two. So it really depends on the teacher, but we do try to have a consistent schedule for parents. We do have a consistent schedule for parents to follow.
Mary, one thing that came up from a good meeting this morning with staff is that this happened late on a Monday night. And we learned this last year that making that switch overnight is really hard for them. And so in the future, when that happens, that Chris will say, this day, we hate to say it, is a day for the at-home learners, that they may have to find some other things because it really is hard to get those supplies. So I know that that's something that was some good feedback from our staff. I mean, we did the same thing last year, But I think, Chris, it's really hard when it happens late at night. And I think for us, we know the impact for parents and also for staff. So just want to share that came back this morning.
Yeah.
And
And it was very quick. And so we're going to build in a transition time at the next time this happens. And hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, we'll have a transition time. Whitney, your hand is raised again.
Yes, I'm sorry. I have another question.
No, that's great. This is why we're here.
So going back to kind of the discussion of the feedback from the survey of, yes, I would like my child to wear a mask versus no, I would not. And then using that data to provide the community the impact of whether this has been helpful or not. And also taking into the discussion of not prejudgment, but kind of that peer pressure or that perspective that kids that either are required to wear a mask or not required to wear a mask. Is there a typical daily dialogue, just speaking from maybe like just infection prevention, using hygiene, wearing masks? Is there just a daily dialogue that the staff will have with kids, regardless or not whether they're choosing to wear a mask, but just that kind of public health initiative and that dialogue to remind those kids that, maybe some that are wearing masks to pull up those masks, or even for the kids that are choosing not to wear a mask, hey, we're still washing our hands and covering our elbows and things like that.
I think we're in the process of redeveloping that right now, because at the beginning of the year we hit that hard and we had the hand washing and wear masks, and then I think that it's in need of a refresher, and we're working on that right now in terms of this messaging about if you're not wearing a mask, that it could impact in-person learning. But yeah, that is, all the teachers do have routines for having kids wash their hands when they come in. So I know they're hearing about that every day. And but we've been in a difficult position up till now in terms of that consistent messaging around masking, because we didn't know, we were trying to respect our community and our decision of our parents, and it was difficult for us to know who should be wearing a mask and who's not. And I did a few things along the way this fall. The mask fairy would go around in the building and hand out masks, but at the same time, I was being very mindful of children who were choosing not to wear masks, that they didn't feel strange or or that they were somehow different. So I sort of let off on that strategy for a while, but I think we're working right now on creating some good messaging that's really consistent, that is fresh and new.
I would say, to parents too, if you have some really good ideas about these, like, and really, I think, Chris, with students, and how can we make it around keeping our pals in class, and that's really important. It was a hard year last year, and we don't want to do that. And so I think that it is that collective efficacy and saying, this is the most important thing, and here's a strategy, and we can do that. So one other thing I know came up this morning in their staff meeting is the possibility of just a community, the school having a community meeting with students and saying, this is why we're doing this. And kindergartners can grasp a lot of deep concepts, and so can all of our students. So I think there's some real good opportunities for what does it mean for UPES Elementary School.
Yeah, I mean, I had a student today whose family is not necessarily supportive of masking, say that to his parent that he wanted to wear a mask because his friend, it means a lot to his friend. So, I mean, some children are feeling that agency and are making decisions likewise. So, okay, so I'll move on to the next slide, which is another what to know. And this may have some questions that it raises for some of you. Expectations for children who are not quarantined. And I think it's important for us to just help the community understand that, like the question about what's the expectation for the child who's at home, who is quarantined, there is virtual learning going on. There is that 30 minutes. And that is a huge load on our teachers. It requires sometimes almost double planning to try to reach remotely and teach the children they have in person. And so the school cannot provide the full load of virtual or extra learning materials for children whose family keep them out of school when their child is not subject to a quarantine? We've had that question asked a lot, but it's just, to be perfectly honest, just overwhelming for our teachers. They really can only focus on those children who are quarantined. So questions about that? Vicky, go ahead.
So just clarification, are you talking about like students who are going on like a holiday, or is that what you're talking about with
Well, that too. It's also sometimes that we might have a sibling with our new guidelines from the county. If a child's not showing any a sibling, a brother or a sister is not showing any symptoms, they're welcome to come to school. If their sibling is quarantined, though, that changes. They can come to school, but they must wear a mask.
Okay.
What we can't be doing is having families voluntarily keep both children out, even though one of them is in quarantine. And we can't meet that expectation of providing full services to the unquarantined child. We really just want to focus on the children who are actually quarantined. And yes, and for ski vacations would be the same.
Well, and again, for clarification, that's for like if a sibling tested positive, then the other sibling is then quarantined but will be provided with materials. Or if they're not showing, do you see what I'm saying?
I do. If they are not showing symptoms, and Dr. Domingue, correct me if I'm wrong on this, they are welcome to come back to school, but they must be wearing a mask.
Yes, and I can just share, this is one of those things that is not a CDPHE requirement for the sibling to wear a mask, but we think it's best practice because at that point there may have been exposure and maybe there's some asymptomatic, and then it's a layer of mitigation that we can be proactive with. And so one of the things that I think Chris is sharing here too is that in this particular situation, right, we know it's first grade and fourth grade, and we know that there were situations
kindergarten and fourth grade.
Sorry,
Yep. That's okay.
wrong information. Maybe a child had a sibling in second grade and said, you know what, I'm just going to keep them both home. That teacher is now not prepared for providing remote learning for that individual child or other things. So this is exactly the same process that we followed last year. We just wanted to kind of reiterate that. So this
Right.
question.
Yep.
Chris, can I just say something real quick?
Yes, please.
I think there needs to be some clarification because the statement was like, so if a child is at home because they're positive, that sibling, the sibling of that child cannot come to school.
They cannot come to school and they would have alternative assignments there provided. Yes. Good question, Whitney.
So I think I misspoke.
If they're positive in the household, the whole household stays home and they stay home until they're out of that quarantine state.
Right. If they are positive, if somebody in the household's positive, if they're quarantined due to exposure, but nobody's positive at home, then the sibling is welcome to come to school, but must wear a mask. Does that make sense to everyone? That's an important point. And Mr. McMartin, thank you for clarifying that. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. No, thanks. That would be not a good one to leave fuzzy. What to know, masks for siblings of those quarantined. So siblings from households with quarantines. Now, if there's a positive in the home, everybody's staying at home. But if there is just a quarantine due to exposure and there's a sibling who wasn't exposed, they are allowed to come back to school. But at that time, it goes from highly recommended to required. They have to wear a mask if their sibling is at home under quarantine, and they have to wear that mask the other sibling at school has to be wearing that mask. Questions about that? And this is just our added layer of mitigation. We just feel it's really, as Dr. Domingue said, best practice. So additional questions, thoughts, or ideas to help us engage everyone? We want to get this messaging out oh, good. Vicky, we have you, and then we'll move on to Jacob. So Vicky, go ahead.
I just have one general question, and this would be for probably the superintendent. Are any of you guys participating in the state COVID testing that Governor Polis is encouraging the schools to do, or any, like at the high school level, or, I mean, are you doing any of those?
Good question. We have tests, but honestly, that serial testing is sort of one of those things that's good in theory in terms of implementation and resource to the schools. And really, the practice is always has been around, when to test. And so I'm not negating the potential efficacy of the serial testing. However, it's just not something that's feasible for us as a school district right now. But what we do have is the testing. So in this case, for these kindergartners and the fourth grade students or any staff member, in that day 5 of this particular quarantine, they are welcome to take one of the tests that we have. So then they don't have to go to the Citadel. We know that's barriers, and that might be a prevention. And then we don't want that to be the barrier for why a child can't come back earlier with a negative test. So we're, like I said, we're not doing the serial testing. And I would say overall across the state, there has not been a high level of participation, especially in our county, to do it. It's just because of the toll and the person power it takes to do that in school. But we are doing the at-home test, and we'll continue to order those, especially in these cases. It's really important. So we send a ton of those test kits to the UPES Elementary School, and then as families need it, then they can do that. These of course are not PCR tests, they are antigen tests, but they also allow for a return to school. Last year, it was different. The at-home could not count as a return to school test. So,
but this year it can. And please get the word out that if anyone ever needs a test, I have them. I'm happy to bring them to the door and hand them to you, or drive them to you. Yeah, it's a small community. I can do that.
Vicki, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that did. I also think that kind of information is great to get out to like the parents, to just kind of add that, hey, we're offering all of these things to help keep your kids safe. And, I think that we're going to, that's just great. Thank you.
Good.
Sure.
Great. Thank you. Jacob, you're next.
Okay, so this may seem mean, but what kind of disciplinary action is going to be happening during the students that are quarantined? Because last year when we were doing the hybrid model, it got out of control with the kids on the Google Classrooms.
You mean what kind of discipline is happening
to keep the kids in line? What they're because a lot of parents can't be at home. They have to get to work, and so the kids are just there, and nothing is happening. And it got way out of control last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's a lot of things we can do, and teachers will have are able to report to me, and I can have a conversation with the family, or when there's a lot of things we can do restoratively with children. We also, all of our teachers have the ability to have a child not be on that particular one and have to make up that work in another way. They have the full power to block a student if they're disrupting the whole class. So there's a lot of different things that we can employ and have employed in the past. So I'm not sure if this addresses your question. I think it's a good question, but is that helpful? Yeah,
it's helpful. There was a couple times I came home from lunch for work, and just my daughter's on the computer, and there's just chaos going on. What is going on here? This is not school.
Yeah, no, that's concerning, and I'm glad to know that. Thank you, Jacob.
I think, Jacob, your expression is why it's so important for us to do these things. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But I hear you when those things happen. It's what can we do on the school side, and then on the parent partnership side.
Yeah, I dropped in on one last year where a child was on a trampoline. So that was definitely not ideal learning situation. So
yeah,
that's a great point.
Like in the high school ones, they were actually creating their own Google Meets and getting completely away from school. It was bad.
Yeah. We are very aware of that, and when those issues arise, we always want to hear from you so we can address them.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Whitney.
I'm so sorry. You know, I have
No,
lots of
don't
questions.
apologize. This is why we're here.
So I just want to backtrack a little bit and just talk about just because I have kids in different grades and talking about some of that implementation when it comes to a child that may be a sibling that may be quarantined, but the other one isn't. So is the same expectation as far as communication, or I guess it's not necessarily communication, but surveillance on the staff perspective on enforcing a mask with those children? How does that necessarily happen? I would assume that with this survey coming forth and more standardization with a mask, yes or no, that would make it easier. But I'm not necessarily in this situation at this point, but if I were to have one kid in quarantine and the other one I want to, of course, send to school, would of course, emphasize the mask requirement. Is that surveillance being passed on in a different manner for making sure that's happening?
Yes,
Okay.
that's a great question, because if you'd asked me 48 hours ago, I don't think I had a coherent answer to that, but right now we do. And that is that we're going to have a discrete system for alerting teachers to siblings who are in school who may have been their parents had asked that they not be required to wear a mask, but because of the quarantine situation now are required to. And so by creating that list every time and discreetly getting that to teachers, we will be able to like surveil that as well. Is that addressing your question?
Whitney,
Chris, that was absolutely great. I really appreciate that detail.
Okay.
one of the other things that came up is how do we give parents the feedback, like how well their child is. So a parent might say, this is what I want, and they're really helping the student is doing these things. That might be an evolution that happens. So some parent might say, I really do want some feedback on my individual child. I really am concerned. And so we'll just have to work through that case by case without taking this big major impact to the teacher, to the classroom. So
right.
There will be some solutions there. There might be very different between kindergarten versus 6th grade. And so I think whatever developmentally is appropriate, that's going to be important.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I think Mary is next. Mary.
Hi.
Hi, how are you, Mary?
I'm good. How are you?
It's good. No, I'm
sorry.
glad. It's good to have a lot of questions. It is.
Okay. So I was just wondering, so there's 2 quarantines right now, and the cases are rising across our county, and we've got 5 districts in the Pikes Peak region that are fully mask mandated. And so I'm just wondering what that discussion is around. What point do we need to consider having a mask mandate at UPES for the majority of kids that can't get vaccinated?
Right. That's a great question. It's definitely something we're watching very carefully. Like I said, we made it 5 weeks into the school year without any incidents, and that was because of the vigilance of our parents and of our students. And we believe at this point in time that we can continue on this track with this level of vigilance and these improvements with, like, for example, getting the word out about quarantining and mask wearing, we think will allow us to continue going forward. We also know that mandates, as Dr. Domingue has said, have not been a solution for other schools where there's, even with the mandates, they're still having quarantines or trouble with compliance and things like that. So we want, yeah, go ahead.
Chris, I mean, definitely where there's the mask, there's a reduction in the number of quarantines. So that.
Yeah, that's a true statement. Yes. Yeah. Yep.
I don't want to put any misinformation out about that. But what has been, to your first thing you said, Chris, is that right now, Mary, the UPass Elementary School has done a good job of keeping COVID out. And so I think one of the things that we'll see is we'll continue to monitor. If we see an uptick, then we'll say, this is the time. If we see
absolutely
Let me just say that fortunately the numbers are starting to decline. There's this is starting to decline, but that doesn't necessarily mean a community, an individual neighborhood doesn't get impacted, or something maybe pops up. There was a big community event recently in Green Mountain Falls area. You just never know. And so I just want us to be diligent and monitoring that. Our COVID response team, we meet every day at 2:00. And so this team includes myself, sorry, that's my dog. That's myself, Eric, our nurse, our two nurses, our second nurse is going to be joining us, our contact tracer, and we're really monitoring that. So sorry, it's thundering also. What is that noise? But anyway, so we do that often. If we see that uptick happening, we'll do that. We don't, Macy, sorry, y'all. Macy, come here. Honestly, this is why I do not do meetings at home. I always do them late in my office at night. So I apologize to everyone.
Yeah.
So that's how we'll monitor it. And I would say too, we had a meeting with the city council. I'm on that task force, as I mentioned, with the city of Manitou Springs. And the question recently came up is, do they need to come off because of some mental health concerns that we're seeing? And so we said right now, the schools are, for example, Manitou Springs Middle School had 5 positives through the front office. And so fortunately we were able to contain that. It did not spread, but that was probably one of the only times we can surely say there was transmission that happened in our schools. Folks were masked and vaccinated in those cases. So just being really watchful about what the community is. So, and I think that is what makes us different than a District 20 or different than a District 49 or 2 or whatever it might be, especially what makes UPES even different than Manitou Springs Elementary School. And I'm not saying that being less cautious by any means.
No. If anything, we have to be more vigilant, and we are.
Yeah, totally. So does that help a bit, Mary, or not necessarily?
It does a bit, yeah. And I think like the mental health side, I think when kids are not in school, I think that's more of a risk to their mental health than wearing a mask is. And so I just know there's a lot of concern right now with these I don't know if you call it an outbreak or what the term is, but I know there's a lot of concern with families around that when the masks aren't required. So, and the concern of, is the school going to close? Or my kid's going to be at home learning? Is this, just right down that path again. So,
yeah, we'll be monitoring that so that does not happen. I think that some of our process and procedure, could there be an outbreak in a class? Like I said, the middle school is a great sort of little mini case study. Like I said, there were masks being worn, and there were vaccinated individuals there, and some who, no, I was thinking someone who had COVID before, but that's not true. So each case presents a new scenario, and we'll continue. It may be that if there's particular uptick at UPES, we say for the next 2 weeks we're wearing masks, and these are required for the next 2 weeks, so we can get this under control. So I just want to so it's not these absolutes that we can be really responsive, but not also not reactive. I think that's where we have to find out. And we're hopeful that this step can help us to be proactive with parent partnerships.
That's that's really important to us. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Domingue. Shayla, you have a question. You have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. So I'm just curious, if there is a mask mandate, if masks are required for every student to wear, will there be remote learning options, at-home options for those who don't want to wear a mask?
Dr. Domingue, I think I'll let you answer that one.
That's not something we've provided. So, at this point, that's not something I imagine. I think that it still goes to, right now, I'll just be, very honest with you that at the high school, we have folks who make individual choices based on some medical reasons, some other exemptions. And so they are required. It is still a very hard to enforce. And so I'll just leave it at that. But last year we never provided that option. We provided fuel ed for families because of medical needs related to not being able to come to school in person. And so But I appreciate the question. I think that that's something that you could definitely, chat with Chris around.
Yeah.
But I'm hopeful that we don't have to do this and that we can keep COVID out of all of our schools.
Thank you for that question, Shayla. Elizabeth Booth.
Hey guys, I was kind of wondering, I wanted to kind of clarify this just in case anybody may have to deal with this later. Say we do start enforcing these lists of kids that are going to have to wear their masks per their parents. Say there's quite a few of them that is refusing to do so. What is the course of action for that? If that becomes an issue amongst the students.
So let me make sure I understand. What you're saying is if there is a requirement to wear a mask and lots of kids don't, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm not saying that the kids are going to revolt by any means or anything like that, but I was worried about maybe the situation where the majority of, and this is just a theory, okay? So say majority of the parents say don't wear a mask, back again on what I said, for any reason whatsoever. And we have these lists of students that are to wear a mask per their parents. What are we going to do if a multitude of those students are not listening in terms of actually doing what their parents want them to do?
Well, that's,
I'll
yeah.
just say, Elizabeth, I think and I want to share for everyone that Elizabeth's role at the school is our safety, our security personnel there. So she may be also thinking about what might be her role in this. And I think what we would always do is let's talk with the parents and talk with students and just take that approach. I'm optimistic that we have really great opportunities for that to happen. It would be the same thing as if a parent on a camping trip asked the child to do something, and we want to make sure. So I think it's just a dialogue.
Yeah,
there.
I have a huge amount of faith in our parents and community. They always come through with whatever we need. We come together. We're a village school.
Good question, Elizabeth.
Yep. Other questions? We're running up towards the end of our time, but other final questions or thoughts?
I want to let, maybe I already mentioned this, that we're working now to get vaccination clinics in line before the children who are 5 and up can be vaccinated. So you can be on the lookout for that. We're going to hope to have one in October, November, December, and January. So those have typically been hosted at the Silk building. So we'll keep you all posted on when those options become available. We're going to try to open those up to our families first, and just want to let you all know.
Great. Amanda.
Hi, thank you guys so much for doing this. I have a quick question based on the call that went out, and just kind of feedback. It didn't say which kiddo of mine was going to be quarantined, and that led to a little bit of confusion. So I don't know if that's already been reported.
No, that is useful. I think I heard that last year too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also, as one of the families that does not have their children in a mask, I am super grateful that you guys have kept it open, and that I just want to say that I don't send my kids to school sick. And I think that, sometimes there gets to be a lot of words that are spoken that where I feel like I am seen as, since I'm making this choice for my children, that we're the big bad scary people. And, obviously our choices are our own, and our reasons for doing them are our own. But I love that UPES has allowed this to continue, and that, I knew what I was doing when this was a possibility of happening, that my daughter would be quarantined. But thank you for having this meeting, and thank you for continuing to be open-minded enough to allow a community to come together and hear both sides. That's all. Thanks.
You bet. And I think that is one of the gifts we have in UPES is that we have the ability, the space, the time, and the relationships to have these conversations deeply with each other. And that's why I'm so thankful that you all came tonight. You are really helpful. I've got some things to act on from your suggestions, and I'm very grateful for all of you. Thank you for attending tonight.
I just want to also add, thanks for that comment. I think one of the things that we want to I think last night, what was that, Monday night, some folks were a little bit blindsided by like, oh, I didn't know that. And so we'll keep doing this educational part and hopefully continue to see those positivity rates decline. And then also hopefully keep children out of hospitals too, and others so within our community. So just appreciate each of you. I too learned a lot each time we're in these, and I just appreciate the questions and the suggestions. I think this is how we get feedback. Chris engaged with the staff this morning, and that opened up this opportunity. A staff member kind of co-created that survey today with Chris, and it is a collaborative experience. And we can't promise that something like this won't happen again, but what we can do is be prepared and continue to talk. And so I just appreciate each of you.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and stay in touch.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.